Welcome to the New Dad Rock.
Hello. Welcome to the New Dad Rock.
Thanks, Keith. We've been doing this for over a year, 40-something episodes, and, we really haven't even talked about Dad Rock.
This is the new Dad Rock.
How do you know what New Dad Rock is if you don't even know what Dad Rock is?
Dad Rock is the 80s. Come on. Right?
What do you mean? There was a lot of stuff that came out in the 80s. It was synth pop, hair metal, Michael Jackson.
Yeah, all that
Kaja
stuff.
Gugu.
all that stuff. Straight up, dude. The whole 80s. And, and when I'm talking about the 80s, I mean, you can't get more 80s than Miami Vice.
Oh, totally. That show had so many great songs in it.
Hell yeah, it did. The theme song was awesome.
Oh, yeah. That was Jan Hammer. He was the same guy that did... another 80s phenomenon, Beverly Hills Cop,
dude, with
Balky.
Yeah, wait, Axel F. That was, right? He did the Axel F song on the keyboards. It's so good, right?
Yeah. Oh my god, that's great.
Boats, bikinis, and 3 days stubble.
Well, that's Miami Vice in a nutshell right there. And then, the skinny ties and the music.
Yeah. Hey, Miami's going off these days. You know that, right? That they're gonna make it boring. They're gonna put a tunnel underneath it from Fort Lauderdale or something. All the tech people are moving there. Have you heard about Miami? It's the new place, man.
I have not.
It looks fun though. If I was younger, I'd probably move there right now.
I don't know, man. When in the 80s, Saturday nights, was it Saturday night or Friday night when Miami Vice was on?
I think it was Friday night.
Man,
I think it was 9 p.m. because I think whatever my age was, at least when I first started, that I went to bed for that, so I'd come out in my pajamas, say goodnight, and then the theme song would start, and I'd go to bed, and then maybe I'd sneak up and watch it from the other room.
Yeah, I remember I used to watch Spencer for Hire after it, maybe.
Yeah, you were allowed up later than I was, I think.
Not only the beaches, the bikinis, the beards, as you mentioned, but Miami, the whole setting, the pastels, and the music, and obviously it's the New Dad Rock. We're here to talk about the music. Don Henley. I remember Ted Nugent played a bad guy on one episode. He had at least a song featured in that episode.
Dude. Phil Collins played a character as well. I think his name was called Ham or something in one episode. And, the most quintessential Miami Vice song of all times is Phil Collins.
In the Air Tonight, without a doubt. When I think of Miami Vice, I think of the theme song, Jan Hammer, and then I think of In the Air Tonight. I'm like, do-do-do-do.
Maybe that should be our theme song for the New Dad Rock.
I don't know. I mean, I know it had a big scene in The Hangover, but I still think of it as Miami Vice.
For sure. If you start Miami Vice, it still is. Yeah, I mean, the other, is Don Henley an Eagle? I always get this a little confused.
Don Henley was in the Eagles.
Yeah. So Glenn Fry was in the Eagles. Glenn Fry was in the Eagles, right?
Glenn Fry was in the Eagles.
And he had a couple songs on Miami Vice, including Smuggler's Blues, which is one of my favorites of all the Miami Vice songs. The Smuggler Blues.
I remember that. Yeah.
The Smuggler Blues.
Did all these guys play characters too?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned Phil Collins and Ted Nugent, I remember, because he was...
Yeah.
I don't know, back in the 80s with that long hair, he was kind of metal. I don't know.
And MTV actually still played music videos then, but the music videos would be the show pieced together with the music maybe. And so they might have filmed their videos the same day they're filming their bit part on the show, but maybe not. Maybe they just splice it together. Yeah, speaking of crazy videos, the same year, who was that guy? Peter Gabriel. He had the sledgehammer one with the claymation hammers beating on his head.
He had a lot of crazy videos. Didn't he do something with Steam, with the ground growing over him? And
Yes. Was that the same album?
No, I think it was... Because I think Steam was on the Us album.
Right, this is not the Us album, yeah. Because the other one is the So album.
Yeah. Right. So...
Us.
So we mentioned Peter Gabriel... I'm sorry, we mentioned Phil Collins as In the Air Tonight, the main Miami Vice song. You mentioned the Eagles, Glenn Fry and Don Henley. Yep. They had their own songs. And Phil Collins had songs. And Peter Gabriel was in Genesis with Phil Collins, which... We should get to that in a minute, but that's a totally crazy thing. No. But was Peter Gabriel in Miami Vice?
I don't know if he was in Miami Vice, but he is the musician with the most songs played on Miami Vice. I think it's 9 or something.
That is crazy because like I said, I totally associate Phil Collins with that, and to some extent Don Henley. Now that you brought it up,
yeah, it's funny that we probably remember different episodes. Not that I can recount any right now. Peter Gabriel. I remember when we were in college, you had a bunch of Peter Gabriel discs, and I did not listen to them really with you. I didn't get it.
Well, Peter Gabriel, I feel like, was always one of those albums that you got through the record clubs, whether it was BMG or the whatever the other one was, the 13 albums for a penny.
Oh yeah,
they always had Peter Gabriel in there, and that album "So," which came out in 1986, that had half a dozen very popular songs from the era.
Yeah, probably the 6 that appeared on Miami Vice, because 6 of those songs appeared on that album. I mean, on the show.
Yeah, I mean, there was Sledgehammer, which was the big, huge hit, but then there was Big Time.
Oh, that one, yeah. Big Time. Yeah, good song.
And then In Your Eyes, which was in, remember that scene, what was it, Say Anything with the boombox, and, that was all sorts of
Dude, it was a prom song, right? Like it was every other prom song. You know what the other big prom song was? I Want to Be Forever Young by Alphaville.
Oh, that was the other one.
Yeah.
Red Rain.
Oh, yeah.
Don't Give Up, with that duet with Kate Bush. That was my introduction to Kate Bush. I mean, I realized she had a pretty big career before that.
Uh-huh.
And Steve Harris of Iron Maiden weirdly has a crush on her. Anyway, I don't know.
Okay, so when did you first get into Peter Gabriel?
I mean, I used to listen to Casey Kasem's American Top 40 every week.
Yep, who didn't?
And I think the top 10 was printed in my local paper, so I knew what the top 10 was, but I had to hear the other 30. And I started, probably in the 80s. So I remember Games Without Frontiers and Shock the Monkey. I remember those songs.
Oh, good, good.
And they were definitely on MTV, like you said, back when they played videos. At the same time, Phil Collins was, that In the Air Tonight motherfucker from Miami Vice, and Genesis had that song Invisible Touch, which makes it crazy that Peter Gabriel was in Genesis. But none of that made any sense to me at the time, because looking back now, Genesis was these long pastoral odes with prog freakouts and dramatic flourishes, costume changes.
It sounds like Sid. It sounds like Sid Barrett, Pink Floyd, right? Like it sounded like I'm like, oh my god, this is totally the late '60s, early '70s. Like it was totally the sound of the scene.
It's kind of like a combination of hair, and the musical hair. Jesus Christ Superstar, and Peter Gabriel on stage would do different voices for the different characters of each song, and they would be like these 10 or 15 minute long suites with different Roman numerals listing the different sections. He would come out with a fox on his head and his wife's dress on. It was, I mean, just crazy.
Theatrical
from our current perspective. Just insane. But you watch it and I don't know. I don't get it. It's kind of dissonant and disjointed, and I don't know. I understand, I appreciate what they're doing. I don't really get it. But it makes me understand, Rush has these sidelong, in the 70s, in that era where Genesis was out, Rush had these sidelong songs that were suites with Roman numerals, Temples of Syrinx and Discovery and Odyssey, and there's 7 parts of 2112 and Hemispheres. But it puts those back into perspective. But I don't know. They're playing these crazy songs.
For the research, I watched one of their 20-something minute long television appearances in the early 70s. And it's all this trippy editing. It's the link is in the notes of the episode if you want to check it out. But it was that's when I said it was I was early Pink Floyd. I was because they're tripling him. It's the simplest video effects, but they're really good and cool, and they're probably the primo effects at the time. So it was They seemed to be doing okay at least. At least they were on some television show, and
they were definitely hip. They were arty, and that kind of progressive scene was kind of cool at the time. So they definitely had minor hits and drew crowds. The Musical Box was one of their songs. And the biggest one is Supper's Ready, which I think is over 20 minutes long. That's on their Foxtrot. That's kind of when they were at the height of the madness, maybe 4 albums in at that point.
So 1974 or 75 or something.
Yeah, and so Peter Gabriel would write songs, and Mike Rutherford would write songs, and Phil Collins would write songs, and Steve Hackett would write songs. Everybody in the band would write songs, and some would collaborate. And I think in the end, Peter Gabriel just wanted to have his own songs and just go in his own direction.
Yeah, he wanted all the songs of the whole album. Yeah, maybe it wasn't fun to hang out. Like, who knows? Oh, people live in different places. That's a big reason, especially back then. Flight wasn't as fun, as easy. What was that big genesis? So they split, right? You know what the album...
Well, it started... Yeah. They were like 5 albums in or so, and then Peter Gabriel went off and went solo. And at this point, I think Phil Collins might have sung on a couple songs here and there, but he takes over lead vocals, and who knew the drummer could sing, but in this case it worked out.
You know what the name of the album was right after they split?
I don't off the top of my head, but it's like Trick of the Tail or something.
No, I think it's And Then There Were Three, which I like.
well, that was after Steve Hackett left. Oh. So after Peter Gabriel left, they did a couple albums. The last one with Peter Gabriel was The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which, as you can tell, was very theatrical. And then they still were pretty proggy for the next couple albums, and then finally, after a couple more, Steve Hackett leaves, and then that's when it's called And Then There Were Three.
Who's left? It's Phil Collins, Mike Rutherford, and is Tony Banks?
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, right on.
And then, so funny enough, Peter Gabriel comes out, and he's known for these 10, 15, almost 20-minute suites of songs, and he comes out, and he's mostly relatively concise, poppier songs. Like, if you go back to Peter Gabriel's first solo album, like, the audacity of the guy, he comes out and he names his, first 4 albums Peter Gabriel.
Wait.
Not even Peter Gabriel 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, they don't have any titles. But people, like, the fans started calling them based on the cover. Like, the fans know how to differentiate them.
What do they call them? It's like Melt and Scratch and Face, is that right?
Oh, Face is 1.
Or Car.
Car is 1.
No, it's Car is 1, and then Scratch is 2, and then Melt is 3.
Because he has a melting
Security
face.
And then Security is 4.
Interesting.
But even on the first album, he had Salisbury Hill, so clearly a lot more poppy, a lot more lighthearted, and getting into the more concise, stripped-down sounds of the early 80s. I mean, I guess that first album's 77, but that the beginning of new wave is being affected there. And 9 songs, 42 minutes, where they used to do like 6 songs in the same amount of time.
Dude. What I'm realizing now is So comes out. It's the big album. It's the one that everyone gets for a penny from Columbia Records. But that's years later, even, because the album came out in the mid '80s.
Well, that's his 5th album. That's in 1986.
Yeah, that's right.
And even before that, he always had hits on his albums. Like, the 3rd album had Intruder and I Don't Remember and Games Without Frontiers.
Wow.
Those were all pretty big hits.
Yeah.
And Security had Shock the Monkey, which was kind of a big thing. And then he put out a live album after that, which he was still...
the live album is when I finally got into him. So the albums, they were individual songs. I didn't get into the albums as wholes. But I liked the songs on the radio, like the individual songs, like Shock the Monkey by itself is just great to hear. And then, but it was the live album that I finally put together. And then I was like, I wish I had seen this. I actually watched some of his live concerts. You can see them in the links below. But there's one, they edited one together where it's all his live shows where he sings the same song and they intersperse him, and he gets real old, real fast.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I saw him on the Us tour, which was, so after So conquered the world in 1986, it was the biggest hit around. If you go back to So, one of the big hits on there was In Your Eyes.
Yep.
Which had those background vocals by the African artist Yasor Nador. His backing vocals, to me, almost launched that whole like Africa thing with like Graceland and Peter Gabriel started
Sure.
incorporating that more and more into his sound. He did the Passion of the Christ soundtrack.
That's right. I love that.
For that controversial. He had that whole Secret World label, so he was.
Yeah. Hassan Hakmoon was on that. We've talked about him before.
Yeah. Tenor Arwen, right through to current day. Mdu Mokhtar. It's that whole kind of thread that goes through. It's becoming more popular again. And then so his next album, so 86, his next real album was Us in, I want to say it was 92. I feel like I was like a junior in college.
The Passion came out
that's
99.
why
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's why I was back into a Peter Gabriel kick when we were hanging out in college. And I was a fan from the 86 and earlier albums. I loved the third one, Melt. That's probably my favorite one. But Us came out and 6 years later, and it was a lot more brooding. It had the lead single Steam, which was a lot like Sledgehammer, and even the videos with stop
Right, that's
motion.
what I was thinking, yep.
Yeah, all that. It was cool, so it was a big hit. But the rest of the album was very melancholy. He was going through a divorce. He had Sinead O'Connor, of all people, did backing vocals on a lot of songs, whereas Kate Bush was on the earlier album. He now has Sinead O'Connor backing up on multiple songs. But it's a very depressing album. I was going through a divorce. I think I was like breaking up with like my, hometown girlfriend during college at the time. So I think I was like, oh, this is so. I was like so emo. Like,
oh my God.
I was listening to that and like Nine Inch Nails Broken like at the same time.
Totally. And that's why people like Juice WRLD write those awesome like modern love songs or breakup songs, and they're like 18, 19. Because like I remember how traumatic everything was when I was younger, and now I'm like, the old dad. Liking the new dad rock.
Yeah.
Hey, a couple things. Did you know that actually So lost to Paul Simon's Graceland for the Grammy Award for Album of the Year in 1987?
Oh, that's funny.
Dude, that's got to be rough, right? Peter Gabriel meets Paul Simon in a bar. He says, hey, I'm doing this cool thing. It's got some African beats, and all of a sudden, bam, he takes it. He had that song with the comedian, Chevy Chase, right?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
There's a video.
Chevy Chase was the original drummer of Steely Dan, though.
Not the same guy.
Yeah.
No.
The guy.
Well, first off, someone's got to explain Steely Dan to me one day, but not today. But wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. All right. Cool. Hey, check something I just learned. So the 5 singles came out from So. Sledgehammer, In Your Eyes, Don't Give Up, Big Time, Red Rain. You listed them. I think you hit all 5 of them. What I didn't know was they were released over a year and like a half. Like that's crazy. The April 21st, 1986 is Sledgehammer, and the last one, Red Rain, comes out the following summer in July of 1987.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the album, like everybody listened to Peter Gabriel at that time. It was just the zeitgeist of the time, and everybody liked it. It cut across, I was a metalhead. Like 86, I was listening to Master of Puppets and Somewhere in Time and Spreading the Disease and Rain and Blood and Peter Gabriel So.
That's right.
Yeah. And it cut across groups of people. So like the people that were into alternative liked it. The people that, listened to pop songs on the radio liked it. Even the classical people liked it because he, did movie soundtrack music as well. So it's kind of crazy. So we always think of 80s music as very throwaway, very light, very poppy, almost plastic, and that's the early 80s like electronic music, like so many one-hit wonders. But when you dig into it, there's a lot of depth.
Do you know Genesis is still touring?
Who cares, man? The guy freaking divorced his wife over a fax. Like, do you need to hear any of those songs again? Like, don't give that guy money.
Oh my God. And that's how the new Dad Rock ended up on the Phil Collins hate list.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll talk about us at his next live concert, which apparently is with Genesis.
Yeah.
Tour's called Last Domino. Check it out.
Yeah,
it's gonna fall soon.
All right, I'm worried about being on Phil Collins shit list. Thank you for the new Dad Rock.
Thank you. We were the new Dad Rock.